In the morning, his cell was empty. Outside stood an impregnable sea fortress carved from rock, 200 guards, shark-infested waters, walls of coquina which absorbed cannonballs rather than shattering. It was a guaranteed death sentence. And inside, on the stone floor, only two things remained: a Spanish doubloon and a wet rope. But this wasn't just any rope. It was a line, hand-woven from dried kelp with a staggering tensile strength. This isn't just an escape story, it's a blueprint. Today, we will dissect the system pirates used to achieve the impossible. To understand them, you have to forget the word prison. A 17th century sea fortress like Fort Charles in Jamaica or San Juan de Ulua in Mexico wasn't a place of confinement, it was a terminal, a human port with a single destination, the afterlife. The escape statistics from these places were zero. In San Juan de Ulua, there were the Las Tinajas, the jars, flooded cells where men stood neck-deep in water until they died. Mortality from dysentery and scurvy reached 80% in the first year. An escape wasn't a race against the guards, it was a race against death. Their success seems mathematically impossible. To understand it, we won't retell tall tales. We will break down their toolkit. Act 1. Psychology. How not to give up when your body is already dead. Act 2. Engineering. How to create a key from nothing. Act 3. Manipulation. How to make the enemy work for you. This is more than a toolkit. It's the operating doctrine of asymmetrical warfare. The battlefield, a 2x3-meter cell. The only army, your own mind. We will deconstruct their protocol for survival and escape piece by piece. Stay with us. You'll get the first tool in 30 seconds. The first step in a cell isn't despair, but work. A total audit of weakness. A pirate turns his cage into a laboratory. He catalogs everything. How many steps a guard takes from the corner to the bars, the exact spot where the light never falls, how the sound of the surf changes, predicting high and low tide, which rat is the fattest and where it finds its food. This is a fundamental shift. He is no longer a victim. He is an analyst. This is the classic OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act, a concept developed by military strategist John Boyd for fighter pilots. A pirate intuitively initiated the same cycle. He gathered data faster than the prison could react to it. Jack Rackham watched a guard for months. The man had a nervous tic. He would scratch his nose just before turning away. This meaningless gesture became a precise chronometer, a 3-second window when no one was looking at Rackham. It was enough. He began to work not on the stone, but on the lime mortar between the stones. Weak, porous. This is the steganography of action. He hid one massive act, the destruction of a wall, inside hundreds of tiny silent movements, each no longer than 3 seconds. Information is leverage. Do this right now, without looking away from the screen. Find 3 things in your room that can become a tool. Shoelaces, a book, a battery. The pirate's mind never turns this scanner off. This isn't paranoia, it's a survival protocol. Psychologists call this overcoming functional fixedness, the inability to see an object's use beyond its conventional purpose. To us, a pen is for writing. To him, it's a breathing tube, a lever for a lock, a stiletto. Activate this MacGyver protocol within yourself. The second trick? Managing expectations. Become the perfect prisoner. Quiet, broken, invisible. Make the system believe you are no longer a threat. Don't rebel. Don't complain. This is the gray man theory used by intelligence operatives. The goal? To become human furniture. So boring and predictable that a guard's gaze simply slides over you without registering. You become part of the landscape, and no one guards the landscape. It was this invisibility that opened the door for their next, much more tangible arsenal. This arsenal was built on a single principle. A pirate saw not objects, but their physical properties. A bone isn't remains, it's a lever. A breadcrumb isn't food, it's a malleable material for a lock impression. Water isn't a drink, it's a hydraulic wedge. Pour it into a crack, wait for a freeze, and the ice will split the stone with the force of hundreds of atmospheres. This is a reimagining of reality at the molecular level. A thread pulled from a shirt is just a thread, but that same thread, moistened with saliva and coated with sand from the floor, becomes an abrasive cord. Over months, it can saw through an iron bar. They weren't looking for a saw, they were looking for a way to cut. Sometimes, the method was chemical. An orange or a lemon, occasionally given to ward off scurvy, wasn't a fruit. It was an acid. For weeks, even months, a prisoner would drip the juice onto the lime mortar between the stones. The process was agonizingly slow, but completely silent. After half a year, the stone could be removed by hand. It's simple chemistry. Citric acid reacts with the calcium carbonate in the mortar, slowly turning it into water-soluble calcium citrate. This isn't brute force, it's weaponized erosion. They didn't break the wall, they persuaded it to dissolve. Consider the rope made of seaweed. Pirates would gather kelp, dry it in the sun until it was as stiff as wire, and weave it into lines. Or they would tear their clothing into thin strips, braiding them with their own long hair. This isn't a Hollywood trick. Human hair is incredibly strong. A single strand can support up to 100 grams. Theoretically, a rope the thickness of a pencil, woven from one person's hair, can support their body weight. This isn't just a rope, this is bioengineering in action. Let's be a prison guard for a moment. You search a cell. What do you see? A lemon peel, dirty rags, some hair on the floor. Garbage. You're looking for a knife, a rope, a key. A pirate doesn't hack the prison. He hacks your definition of a dangerous object. The guard is an antivirus searching a database for known threats. The pirate is a zero-day exploit, an attack the security system has never seen and cannot recognize. He doesn't bypass the defense. He makes it meaningless. But even the most ingenious tool is useless if you don't have the time to use it. To buy that time, pirates needed the greatest resource of all, human folly, and they learned how to cultivate it. Everything so far has been the hardware of escape. But to make it work, they had to write the perfect software, code that hacked the most vulnerable processor in the prison, the guard's brain. And that brain was the most fragile part of the entire system. The first act of this theater, simulation. The pirate would transform into a walking biological threat. He didn't just cough. He feigned madness, staged epileptic seizures, and simulated religious ecstasy. The goal, get to the infirmary. Fewer guards, different walls, new opportunities. In London's Newgate prison, inmates would fake jail fever or typhus. It was a game of death. To make the simulation convincing, they would swallow tobacco or soap to induce vomiting and fever. They risked dying for real for a chance to live. A guard's sympathy or disgust was just another key on their ring. The second act, creating noise. Pirates lied constantly. They gave up the locations of non-existent treasure troves. They informed on fictional conspiracies in neighboring cells. They slandered some guards to others. 99% of this information was garbage, but this garbage overloaded the system. It's a classic information overload tactic. Imagine setting off 100 smoke bombs in a building. When a real fire starts, no one will pay attention to the alarm. The pirate created so much informational fog that his real preparations became invisible within it. But the masterstroke was not deception. It was infection. One pirate studied a young guard for months. He learned about his debts. He didn't offer a bribe. That would be too simple and too risky. Instead, he began to loudly tell stories, supposedly to his cellmate, about immense treasures buried on an island, the map to which only he remembered. He wasn't recruiting. He was selling a dream. 2 months later, the guard came to him with an escape plan. This isn't bribery. This is high-level social engineering. The key principle, described by psychologist Robert Cialdini, is that the idea must seem to belong to the target. The pirate didn't buy help. He infected the guard's mind with an idea so thoroughly that the guard believed it was his own. And a man is willing to die for his own idea. Manipulating people is an art, but people are unreliable. They can betray, make mistakes, or get scared. Having mastered this fragile human element, the master escape artist turned to an ally who would never fail. A partner with no will, no fear, and no greed. They learned to read the ocean and the sky not as a barrier, but as a timetable written by nature itself. The most reliable accomplice is the one who always arrives on time. Many sea fortresses had underwater grates on their drainage channels, a double-locked trap. At low tide, the grate was exposed but visible to all. At high tide, it was hidden by water, but the current was strong enough to crush a man against the bars. The pirate waited for a third state. This brief interval is known to sailors as slack water, or the stand of the tide. The moment when high tide turns to low, and for a few precious minutes the current stops. Their cell was not just a prison, it was an observatory. By watching the phases of the moon, they could predict this pause with minute-by-minute accuracy, weeks in advance. Their clock wasn't on a tower, it was in the sky. If the tide was their schedule, the storm was their diversion. For the prison, a storm is chaos. For the pirate, it is perfect order. Guards hide from the weather, huddling together in the guardhouse. The roar of the wind and waves drowns out any sound, whether it's a stone striking stone or the crack of a breaking plank. A flash of lightning momentarily illuminates the yard, allowing a comparison of reality with the plan memorized in darkness. An experienced sailor can feel the drop in barometric pressure hours before a storm. For the guards, it's a sudden problem. For the prisoner, it's an expected accomplice. The storm was their diversionary team, providing sound cover, disabling visibility, and washing away all traces. Escaping during a storm. At first glance, it seems like pure luck, but let's break it down into its components. Knowing the storm will wash away your tracks is calculation. Preparing a tool in advance and waiting weeks for a storm is calculation. Using the roar of the waves as a sound cloak is calculation. Luck accounts for 20% here. Calculation, 80%. As Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. The pirate didn't count on luck. He created a system where any random event, be it a storm or a guard's mistake, became not a lucky break, but a planned part of the entire mechanism. Psychology, engineering, manipulation, harnessing the elements, these are all individual lines of code. Now, let's see how one legendary pirate assembled them all in the perfect sequence to pull off an escape that went down in history. We have examined the evidence, we understand the motive, we have analyzed the method. It's time to reconstruct the perfect crime, the escape that turned a simple man into a legend. Take Edward England. After a mutiny, he and 3 of his comrades were marooned on Mauritius. This wasn't a prison, it was a sentence, an uninhabited island surrounded by thousands of kilometers of the hostile Indian Ocean. There are no walls to break, no guards to deceive. Your cell is the entire island. Your jailer is the horizon. The task is impossible. They didn't fall into despair. They initiated the same protocol, a total audit of weakness, only now their laboratory was the entire island. They cataloged everything. Where the strongest vines grew, which trees didn't rot in salt water, how the wind direction changed with the rainy season. Their arsenal of the impossible was built from what the ocean washed ashore. For ropes, they wove coir, the fiber from coconut husks, which is resistant to salt. For the boat's nails, they carved them from fragments of ironwood found on the coast. This wasn't an escape plan. It was a 4-month, from-scratch shipbuilding project. Their guard was nature itself. You can't hide from it. You can't deceive it with informational noise. So they didn't fight it. They recruited it. They built their boat knowing that the monsoon season would completely change the ocean currents. They weren't waiting for nightfall. They were waiting for the right time of year. They waited for their jailer to turn the key in the lock and open the way home for them. Their storm was the trade wind that was due to blow for only a few weeks a year. And so, after 120 days of hellish labor, they launched their small vessel. According to legend, they named it the Fancy. Their escape wasn't about picking a lock or sawing through bars. It was a victory of engineering and indomitable will over an entire ocean. It is not just a symphony of hundreds of small calculations. It is an ode to the human spirit that refuses to be caged. They didn't escape from prison. They built the key to it. This key they built is assembled from 3 core principles. This is their operational code. First, observe, don't wait. Turn your problem into an object of study. Every system has vulnerabilities. Your job is to find them before the system crushes you. Second, a tool is a function, not an object. Don't look for a key, look for a way to open the lock. As designer Charles Eames said, need is the prime condition for design. The pirate was a designer whose material was chaos. And third, the thickest wall is in your enemy's mind. Don't try to break through it. Find a way to seep through it, using their blind spots and biases. But all of this brings us to the main question. What was the decisive factor in all these stories? The incredible ingenuity and fortitude of one person? Or the fatal negligence and overconfidence of a prison system that always underestimates its captive? Was it the genius of an individual breaking the system? Or was it the fragility of the system itself, which inevitably cracks under the pressure of human will? Before you answer, consider this. Perhaps true genius lies in being the first to see that inevitable crack. Write just one word in the comments that you think is the key: genius or system. I'm very curious to see which one gets more votes.